Hi EX Chandler. Welcome back to Tom Plays EU4 for absolute beginners. We're back with the Ottomans and we're finally ready to press play. Except for one thing. We're moving our land units into position, but I realised we haven't yet done anything with the Navy. Now the Navy is the unit here, currently in port. It's actually two navies rather than one. Most nations begin with three of these, or a number of these, a separate navy of light ships. These are basically for protecting trade. It's not something I want to go into at this stage, but it's worth sending them off. So, nice and simple, you're looking for these three light ships, select mission, protect trade, and it gives you a little hint as to where you should send it. It tells you how much profit you should get. In theory, these ships should pay for themselves when you've got them, so it's generally well worth getting them. So in this case, the best option it's offering is Ragusa. So we're just going to send it to Ragusa. The other thing that you should always remember is this bit here at the top right. These ships aren't really intended to fight, so if you just set this, they will try to land as soon as war starts. So it gives them a better chance of surviving. Now the other navy, nice and simple, is made up of heavy ships, galleys, kind of, sort of, I suppose, light military ships, and transport ships, which aren't really intended to fight. The lighter ships, the less powerful ships, are actually quite useful on internal seas. They get a bonus, and as the Ottomans, we're always going to be on internal seas. So they're more worth considering than they normally would be. This navy here, I'm just going to move offshore of Candar for when we attack them, and I will just leave them there. You can see Candar has its own navy. When we take Sinop, this navy will be forced to set off, and I want my navy waiting to take them on. And that should be it. We're finally ready to press play. Get this show on the road. So, it's all going to be about diplomacy while we move into position. Karakoyunlu has accepted our offer to enter a military alliance, which is brilliant. That should, in a bit, free us up to make another offer, which we're going to be looking for a European. You can see if we look at the offer alliances, nice and simple, big red X. Most Europeans do hate us, unfortunately. Allying with Poland would have been great. This is simply telling us that we have rivals. In effect, we set rivals last week, and it's just telling us that we've got a new reason for war because the Mamluks are our rivals. As I think I said last week, Bohemia is often a good bet. They will ally most people, so I'm going to offer them an alliance, which gives us an ally in Europe. Could come in useful later. Now then, also going to offer Adana an alliance. If you remember, the plan with Adana is to vassalize them, if at all possible. So I'm going to be going through everything I can to make them like me. And we're going to hope we can bring this up. And our final alliance, I think we should probably leave the last one. Might be able to vassalize these guys as time goes on, but sorry, bear with me, we've got some new. Okay, Ramazan. This is Adana. The country's actually called Ramazan. They've sent us a royal marriage offer, which will improve our relationship. And we can now vassalize them, which is good news. We're just able to vassalize them. So all we need to do that is to get their opinion of us to 190. There are various ways we can do that. The first way, the easiest way, is to offer them military access. So that just says they can send troops through our lands, but it improves their opinion of us. The basic way is going to be this improved relations option, so we should leave someone doing that. I've been offered a royal marriage from these people now, so I'm going to accept that because we're going to be allies with them for a good long time. Okay, how are we doing here? Okay, we've built our troops, so I'm going to move those into position. And you can see we've fulfilled a mission. The mission we've fulfilled here is build a force limit. So we've just built enough troops. So I'm going to select it, just click on it to complete the mission. We've been given some bonuses, which is good. But I think we should also get a reason for war against these guys. This hasn't disappeared, which tells me there's another mission we've fulfilled. Reform the Imperial Army. There we go. And this is the one that gives us the claims. Which is brilliant. Okay, so if we accept those, we've gained a conquest casus belli against Candar and Caraman. Just going to dragon select this because at the moment it's still a number of armies. And I want it all to be a single army. So now let's look at declaring war. Okay, they are currently... Oh, that's new. They're allied with the person I'm planning to vassalize. Very interesting. Can I vassalize them before I declare war? Because if I can, that would actually allow me to do this without having to fight them. At the same time, they're not a particularly imposing enemy, so while it would make it harder to vassalize them, they're not that dangerous, so maybe I should just go ahead. Worry about vassalizing them later. Crimea is asking for military access. I don't see any problem with that. Crimea is the Orthodox nation to the northeast. I think on the whole we're far enough away from vassalizing that I would rather just go ahead. So let's attack. It doesn't matter which of these two provinces we choose. I'm also deliberately not going to check this box. I don't want to call any allies into this one because as a war is so simple, I don't think we need any. And we might need to call them into something later. These are our main allies. There is a limit to how often they will let you call them into war. So, best not to call them in unless you actually need them. Or if you're pretty sure you're not going to go to war for a while. Serbia would also like military access. Generally, you can safely agree to these. Got an event from Moldova? Not really. Something that concerns us. Let's get this show on the road. Instantly move my troops into their land. Now we've got a few new little tags. This allows us to call out allies, which I don't want to do. This tells me that I'm at war, which I already knew, and this tells me there's some unrest in Sivas. We may have already had that, possibly partly to do with the missionary. But I'm not particularly worried. We've already made contact with the enemy, and you can see it's going quite well. If you select one of the troops, you get a more detailed view, and we've already won. You get a few bonuses for winning, which is great, and that has, I think, forced the navy out, and we also won a naval battle. Brilliant. So we now just have to wait. This province doesn't have anything protecting it, so it actually tells us when it's going to become ours. This province has a fort. These can take a while. It's based on random chance. So you can see what the options are, and every time a month changes, it should randomly roll, and hopefully the fort will progress. If we roll a 1, we get a disease outbreak, which is not good news. It's nothing very important though. Another request for military access. We have now taken over this province. So what I'd like to do, because we have a better general here, I'm going to move this army over to the fort. Actually, I'm just wondering if Ramazan's even attacking us. Oh, they are. They're just not doing much that I can see. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to move our less good general over here, so that our better general can leave the siege and head down to Ramazan, which we're not actually able to get to, which is always fun. I wonder why. In which case I'll just leave both armies on the fort. I sometimes find this, I'm sure one of the more experienced players would know the reason, but at the beginning of a battle you can't always get through neutral lands. You could of course ask them, although unless they like you they won't give you permission. You can see people all over the place asking me for military access. On the whole, I tend to find that later on you just get given access anyway, so I usually just leave it. What else is going on? Okay, they have a navy here which is blockading us. This is going to cost us money every month. I might send my navy over to fight them, but I'd rather keep them in place for when we take this area first. So if I just zoom out a little, hopefully we can make sure nothing too disastrous is happening. We have a couple more of these. One just vanished. The one that just vanished was to tell us that we'd taken casualties and that our army was having to replenish from our manpower, which is getting quite low. The other one is to tell us that we're being blockaded by ships. So if you have a really powerful navy, when you see this, you could send your navy along to free you up. Our navy isn't that powerful, but it's probably still more powerful than Ramazan's. So I may well do that once this is dealt with. What else do we have? Okay, that's slowly going down. It's still a minus 21 chance of them surrendering. So there's no chance of them surrendering. Next month, you should see, as well as this changing, you should see a little message over the siege itself to tell you which of these options was picked. We just had supplies shortage. But in effect with the sieges, you're basically just waiting. It's a waiting game. If for any reason all your armies move away from a siege, it starts from scratch as well. So it's worth being aware of. It's also being aware of if an enemy's besieging one of your forts, because if you can distract them, attack them, draw them away, it starts a siege from scratch. Can be a good strategy. The rogues in Hungary. Right, this is exactly what we're going to do to Byzantium. We're going to fabricate a fake claim to some of their land. I'm not very worried, but it might mean that Hungary is preparing to attack us. I think realistically they're probably not likely to. So I'm certainly not going to worry about that. In the meantime, what else do we have? Down here, we've got an accumulating, what they call a war score. It's a percentage value, and it tells you effectively how completely you're defeating the enemy. If it's in red, it means you're losing. It's in green, it means you're winning. So we're gradually winning. We gain this for provinces taken. Provinces with forts are far more valuable. Capital cities are even more valuable. I would expect this to be a capital city, although it's not immensely obvious. Usually there's a little star to tell you. Interesting. But it kind of has to be the capital city in this case, because it's the only fort they have, and the only remaining province they have. So once we take this and defeat their last navy, this should jump up to 99 or 100%, at which point we will be able to insist that they just give us their country. Full annexation. The slight caveat to that is, with Ramazan still in theory in the fight, it might prevent the score from becoming total, at which point we'll need to go down and take down Ramazan as well. Okay, Serbia are also claiming some of our land. Athens are also claiming some of our land. Byzantium are also claiming some of our land. So it's not just us that's doing that, we're all at it. Wallachia also claiming some of our land. And the Mamluks. Excellent, everyone wants a piece of us. Albania, good grief, they've got a hope. They've only got one province. Mind you, so has Greece. Athens. If you do click on a little shield down here, you get a more detailed view. Okay, now this is an event. These fire randomly. Sometimes they're disasters, sometimes they're really good. Usually they pause the game automatically so you can read them until you carry on. You can unpause it if you really want to, but you will eventually get a default option picked if you don't choose it. Okay. So we've got two options here. We basically leave our merchants to their own devices, or we use some diplomatic power to help them out. I would always help them out in this case. Gaining mercantilism is generally a good thing. Certainly in the game, not necessarily in real life. Even though it costs us diplomatic power, which is very important, I think it's worth choosing in this case. Okay, so a more detailed view, it tells us exactly who's against us, who's on our side, which is no one at the moment, and how fed up we are, basically. Also how much work they've done in the war. Sorry, that's how much work they've done in the war. Can't honestly say I've seen Ramazan do anything, but there you go. It's sometimes worth keeping an eye on, because if someone has medium or low, you can sometimes persuade them to make peace. Which, if you're going after a particular nation, if you can make the other nations make peace, it makes your life easier. In this case, I've gone straight for Candar, so Ramazan's still quite happy about making war. Genoa also wants some of our land. Just going to check if we can access Ramazan. Yep, and there you go. As if by magic, we can suddenly attack Ramazan. It's telling us we've won the siege. So we've now completely conquered Candar. We have a naval battle happening. So the battles tend to be all about morale. Certainly in the early game, raising morale is very important, if you possibly can. And there we go, we have won. We haven't actually destroyed the ship, So I assume it's heading somewhere to escape from us. I'm not going to be vindictive because I want to bring it over here and stop this blockade. While we're at it. It looks like I am following them. You can try to follow them and get an opportunity to attack them again while their morale's still very low. The morale is shown by this little green and red bar on the side, so it starts at full. Mine's a little down. If you attack someone while their morale's already low, you're almost certain to defeat them and inflict a few more casualties. It is kind of mean. Okay, so it looks like I'm actually going through two navies, which might be a little risky. I suppose really I could move both of my armies to Ramazan, because they're not going to be doing anything up here now these places are occupied. Corfu also wants some of our land. This navy's actually just run away. So a bit of a closer battle here, but we're still winning overall, which is good. In this case I think it's superior numbers and possibly ship types. It's very hard to make out what types of ships everyone has. But it makes a big difference if you have transport ships and if you have heavy ships. But we're clearly winning even though they actually have a general. I don't think it's likely that they will be able to turn this battle around. It's one of the few times we'll be fighting naval battles because a lot of our other opponents have much stronger navies. Especially the Europeans, especially if Venice gets involved. At which point I will be parking my ships firmly and not moving them because I don't want them trashing if I can avoid it. Okay, this morale just jumped up. The reason is that another navy joined the battle. This could be quite dangerous. Okay, this is an event all the way from France. Not very important for us, really. Certainly at this stage. At the same time, we are now sieging Ramazan. I'm being reminded of something I'd forgotten. Let's just finish this little battle. And there is something we should be doing with our rivals. In effect, the Mamluks are embargoing our trade, which is a good idea. Something you should always do to your rival. Which I had forgotten to do. This is actually starting to look a bit close. Very close. I don't know if you can easily make it out, but these numbers on the left are the random die rolls. And they were going against me quite badly. They've improved now. It actually looks like we're losing. Venice is claiming our land. And I've lost. That's unfortunate. So what tends to happen when you lose a battle is you take some casualties and usually your army just runs for what it thinks of as the nearest safe location. Sometimes it isn't. In this case it's a navy, so they've literally just parked up. It's not actually that big a deal that we've lost a naval battle. Land battles can be quite disastrous if you lose them, but the naval battle, we never really had that strong a navy anyway, and we don't really need to go anywhere by sea at the moment. So I'm not going to worry about that. Just going to focus on the siege. What I could do is just double check up here whether we're able to demand full annexation yet. So if you right click to get to the diplomacy screen again on Candar, There's an option to sue for peace. Now, as a rule, there's many options here, but if you... It's telling us we've had a kid. Excellent, good to know. If you choose suggest demands, the computer usually gives you what it thinks will be accepted. A little odd, or at least what it thinks is appropriate. It's actually telling us that this will actually be refused. But this is what we want. We demand their full annexation. You can modify these. I could try and take down the amount of money I'm demanding, in the hope that they might actually accept it. I don't think they will. No. Okay, my other option is to right click on Ramazan and see if they will be willing to make a peace, but they're not. We're going to have to conquer the fort. So this would be nobody gains or loses anything, which is what I want with Ramazan, because I actually want to be friends with them. So in the meantime, let's just check our rivals again. So I'm right clicking myself. I have 3 rivals. You should always do a trade embargo on your rivals. The main reason is that it increases this score up here, power projection, which is a little like prestige in that it affects how people view you. In this case, it affects how powerful people think you are. You can see we've got a positive power projection, and it does give us a few bonuses. So it's worth increasing it. So let's start with the Mamluks, because they've actually started on us. Right click them. So we've got a diplomacy screen. We need to go down to more or less the bottom to economy actions and issue embargo. It upsets them, but they're our rivals, they already hate us. So, excellent. So we also need to do our other rivals, which is Venice. We still have a truce with Venice, so we can't actually embargo them. And Hungary, which is the same. So when the truce lifts, we need to remember to embargo them if possible. If you do forget this, as I did, it doesn't actually matter very much. We can manage fine, whatever people think of us. So I guess we're waiting for the truce now. We do have 2 free diplomats, so we should... Let's think. We should look at improving relationships with people. So I'm just going to right click on Bohemia, and the relations actions, there's an option to improve relations. That ties up a diplomat until they've improved it as much as they can. But it does tend to make things better as time goes on. So it's generally worth doing. I might want to save the last one for Ramazan though. Assuming we can still vassalize them once we've conquered them. It might pull them off us a bit. We'll have to see. In which case I might move on to the Dulkadir. Other than that, I think we're effectively waiting for this siege to break. I don't know if there's anything else we particularly need to worry about right now. One thing you might notice is that when we declared war, or when we entered a war, all our forts were no longer mothballed. You can mothball forts during a war. It's a little risky, but it's something I would sometimes do if I was actually losing money. I don't believe that we actually are. Let's just check. Click on the shield. Also need to check economics. No, we are actually losing money, but we have enough money to handle it. An alternative to avoid losing money is to raise war taxes. This can be a good source of free money if you need it during the war, and it's useful to offset the fact that your forts tend to be active, all your army fleet maintenance becomes maximum. which you may have turned down to save money, but it also tends to mean your citizens get sick of a war sooner. So if you can avoid doing it, that's great, you can keep your war going. We probably don't need to avoid it here, but the other drawback is it uses military power. So that's why I'm not going to do it. Generally don't do it unless you have to. But if you're a poorer nation, you really do have to. Just trying to think if there's anything else. We could just check on our spies' progress in Byzantium. So that's covert actions in diplomacy again. If you hover over, we've won. If you hover over the stop building spy network, it does actually tell you how you're progressing. So we have 38.99. To fabricate a claim at the moment will cost 20. That goes up by 5 for every claim you already have. So we're going to need quite a lot of score here to actually fabricate claims on the whole country. So I'm not going to fabricate a claim just yet. Also, if your agent is discovered, this score starts dropping instead of increasing, so it's time to quickly pause the game and fabricate any claims you can, or do anything you can before that score just gets wasted. So let's just leave them. We have won the siege, brilliant. We've been told about something happening in Poland that doesn't really affect us. Okay, so usually in this situation I would start with the country that I'm not attacking, just suggest demands, see what it gets. It gives me some extra money, worth having. Send demand. They've accepted that. We have some free cash, which is brilliant. So we now go over here. You can see we've got 100% war score. We need to wait for our diplomat to re-emerge. There we go. See for peace, suggest demands, full annexation, and this time because the score's improved they also pay us some money, which is brilliant. So we now have some more land. So the first things we should do is just check with this. We can't do anything about the units suffering casualties. We can do something about having exiled armies, so I now want to move our armies into position near Constantinople. I'm going to move a weaker army here next to Constantinople itself, because I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of allies, and also that's only one province, whereas there are potentially 3 provinces here. If you remember, Byzantium owns Athens, they're a vassal. So I'm going to move a stronger army, the army with a better general, into position here. Okay, so while they're in position, we've got a few things to deal with. Exiled armies we're now dealing with. They're just armies that are in enemy land. Or, not our land, I should say. Hopefully Ramazan isn't an enemy. Corruption is growing. Yeah, we do need to fix this. Generally, you don't want it to be growing. So, if you click on it, you get taken to the economy screen again. And there's an option for root out corruption. If you can see, we've got a total yearly change of 0.01 and it's highlighted in red. We just want to move this so it's yellow. So we just go slightly to the right. Green is okay as well. I mean, it shouldn't matter if it's on red and 0. I just feel better having it in green or yellow. Yellow is neutral on the green-red balance. So that should be fine. We can close that screen. The one other thing that's appeared is this button here. Some of your provinces lack cores. This is quite important. Ideally, you want to make core on any provinces that you take over, especially if you're planning to keep them. So we're just going to say make core. It uses administrative power, and quite a lot. We're going to do something a little later when we get the chance, which will reduce how much this costs, because we are going to be doing this a lot as the Ottomans. Okay, Poland has vassalized Moldavia. Okay, that does concern us. The other thing worth keeping an eye on is this thing at the top left is war exhaustion. This goes up all the time you're at war, and it goes up faster if you apply war taxes. As I was saying earlier, it's how quickly your citizens get sick of war. This can be quite disastrous if it gets too high. You'll have uprisings, you'll generally have a mess. It will start going down again once you're no longer at war, but it doesn't go down immediately. So if you do war after war after war, you can run into problems. Aha! Byzantium are spying on us, but we have actually found their spy. This is all automated, but it's good news. Okay, so we're now moving armies into position around Byzantium. Probably not going to use my navy now, so I'm just going to put them over here in Bolu so I can see where they are. They're somewhat diminished. I think I now have only one military ship and the rest are just transports, so I don't think I'll be using them again until I've had a chance to build them up. What else? I think we're pretty much sorted there, so we should be gearing up to attack Byzantium. Hopefully take Constantinople, which, if you remember, is on our mission tree. City of the World's Desire. So it'll just be a question of waiting for our spies, I think. But we're actually gone slightly over time. So we've successfully conquering Candar, and let's just set up the conditions to try to vassalize Adani again. And with that, I think that will be everything we can do. I will see you next week.